Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
Welcome to the Filmsteins, the double feature podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with our cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level. The $5 tier will grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Filmsteins, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience. And welcome back to another episode of the Filmsteins. Thank you for joining us today. I am joined today by my mediocre friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone. Mediocre. All right. I see how today's gonna be.
You can join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for brand new episodes of the Filmsteins. Some recent episodes include Netflix's own Leave the World Behind, our Grinchmas special, Wonka, the new Wonka, not the old Wonkas, A Star is Born, and Maestro, another Netflix film. We've been stroking Netflix lately.
Yes, we have.
We gotta get off that train.
Mm-hmm.
But today we are discussing the totally historically accurate film by Miloš Forman, Amadeus, the 1984 film. This has been a film that I've rejected for all my life. I've been recommended it many times. One of probably top 10 movies I've been recommended in my life, Amadeus. And I'm just like, I'm good.
Yeah, I can't say that I've ever been recommended this film. I didn't even know this was a thing.
It certainly was a thing. It was apparently a wide hit, too, for the time. And it seems like it is, the way people talk about it, it seems like it's sort of this forgotten great film. Because it's not part of the lists of, you know, the greatest films ever made and stuff. It's not a Citizen Kane. It's not a Godfather, right? It's not a 2001 A Space Odyssey. But the way people talk about it, it is one of those films. I'm just like, that's I don't know, it's just kind of unfortunate. And it's won, you know, millions of awards back in its day. And I'm really happy to report back that this is another older movie that's very good.
Yes.
I'm always surprised.
Me too. Me too.
Old movies being good. It's not even that old, I guess. But you brought it up earlier. The one thing that's just like, ooh, it just does not age well. And it may be a format thing where we're watching it and it just may not look quite right, but how Salieri's old man version looks. He looks pretty bad. He doesn't look like an old man.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he does. He looks like the essence of an old man, but it looks like a mom that's like pretty good with, you know, makeup, Hollywood style makeup and stuff, and they send the kid out and on Halloween and everybody's impressed, but it's like it's not that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he looks old, yes, but I think he's supposed to look kind of sick too, sickly.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah, he looks a little off.
Yeah, he looks off. For
Yeah,
sure.
I know you mentioned The Exorcist was kind of fits that bill too, and
Yeah.
it certainly does. The old Exorcist film
Yeah, something about the makeup
doesn't age well.
didn't age well. Some of those yellows and green tones just didn't come across as sickly.
Mm-hmm. And I can't help but to believe that half of that must be because of how we're watching it today and the TVs we're watching it on. So, but I'm not sure. I really can't say. But it's even a little more surprising this film's actually really good because it's 3 hours long.
I know.
And I believe we watched the director's cut too, so it was like 15 minutes longer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we that was the one that was available. That's the one we watched. So I don't know what's missing, or you know, I don't know what was missing from the theatrical at least.
Yeah.
So I'd be kind of curious to know if anyone wants to write in about that. That'd be great. on our Patreon at patreon.com/filmsteins. Remember to leave nice comments and reviews over there too.
Please.
Come by and give us $1.
Give us $1.
But yeah, man, I know you've been kind of high on this film too after we watched it, and you're in a similar boat as me. I know it's hard to get through old movies sometimes. The revered Scrooge was a tough watch.
Ooh.
To Kill a Mockingbird, tough watch.
Yep.
How do you feel about Amadeus?
No, I really like this film. I was very surprised that I would. You know, it's about classical music, you know, on the surface. So that's not a great genre for me. I'm not in any way learned in music, especially classical music. But I do love period pieces. So at least I got some of that going on here.
Absolutely.
For me. But I mean, I loved it. Everything from the performances to the story, the perspective, even Mozart's music too, because that's so iconic. Even if you're not classical music person, you still know one of Mozart's.
Whether you know it or not.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Shakespeare, where you have all these phrases and words and idioms and shit, and
exactly,
you're just like, it's just part of the public consciousness and transcends the man.
Yeah, I mean the music, not the romance,
the sort of
the bromance.
Oh, the bromance, yeah.
The bromance, the drama. I mean, even the pacing, the editing. I was so surprised and so happily amazed by this film, and I wasn't bothered that it was 3 hours long. I really wasn't. I know we kind of broke it up into pieces, but not because we wanted to, but kind of we needed to, you know, with the holidays and everything, with the new year and stuff. So we had to pause, and I hate that because I think I would have liked to watch it through, but I don't know. I don't know how I would have felt then, you know. It's kind of a situational thing, but I was not bothered by the pacing at all. There wasn't anything that I would be okay with cutting out or think it's not important in any way.
Well, the big spectacle of the film, I think, probably starts with how it looks and how they look, where everything happens. It's pretty insane.
Yes.
What they built out and where they shot. They, of course, filmed Don Giovanni in its original place of performance.
Oh, wow.
That's like, I mean, I guess for the playwright, and if the director was a major fan of Mozart, that's got to be the craziest thing to experience. I guess anyone in the crew who's a major fan of Mozart working in that oh my God, it had to be nuts to.
Yeah, fangirling.
Yeah, totally.
No, I'm glad you bring that up because the set designs and the props here were too real. They were awesome. It wasn't like, you know, Wonka that we had kind of a surreal prop, like the candy looking so shiny and his suitcase kind of having all these moving parts. You know, that is a cool prop to look at and it's wonderful. But in a film like this, you gotta get everything historically accurate. And, you know, I don't know what was invented when, and I couldn't tell you, like, hey, that light bulb wasn't of that time. I don't know. You know, that candle, the long candle wasn't lit back then. It was the short candle, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know that much about that kind of stuff, but I can appreciate at least the effort.
Yeah, and there's like a nice continuity to it all.
Yeah.
And homogenized feel. Nothing feels out of place. That's the most important part of filmmaking, is you can get away with a lot of historical inaccuracies as long as you make sense of it. And I think they do a really good job here. Because from what I could tell, the play is a little bit more flamboyant and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that was maybe some people's problem with this film, was it didn't do the play justice.
Are you kidding me? This was all flamboyant and crazy.
Well, yeah, but it was done through like a very natural lens, which I think is, you know, has a lot to do with our director here, Miloš, which I think is it's one of, you know, it brings up the question, like, do we just want a recreation of the play in a cinematic form. It's like, we already have the play. What's the cinematic thing going to really offer if we just try to translate it one for one? That's stupid, I think. I think that's a waste of everybody's time and artistically bankrupt. What can cinema bring to the play is the real question.
Yeah.
And that's, an endless open question. And we get a really cool answer to that with this film by merging on one hand, the crazy amount of character within all of the characters, even though we do get some kind of one-sidedness out of our characters because of our specific perspective. We'll definitely talk about that. But we also can fit it out to what it feels like it may have looked like in your mind's eye at the time and stuff, because you wouldn't be able to do that on a stage, obviously, all the moving parts and all the intricacies of making some kind of theater production happen. You don't have the liberties of what?
It's almost live,
Yeah, oh yeah, I guess exactly. It is a live thing.
So you got to go fast.
Yeah, and you may have recited it 5,000 times, but you still are at the mercy of your set and working within the boundaries of your set. Filmmaking has its own boundaries, but the ceiling is way higher. If you can just give the illusion of something happening, you can sell it in a film. You got to make something that really kind of happen in a live setting. So it demands the question of like, what are you going to do with this? Not if the translation works. So I really, really, really fucking like the creative liberties they took. Because the only real question I have about the original play is, how did they tackle Salieri's storytelling perspective from the very beginning and sprinkled throughout? I wonder what that looked like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting thought, because that's super easy to capture on film.
Yeah,
having that perspective or that kind of time change.
We can just stop.
Yeah.
It needs to obviously make some kind of storytelling sense or some kind of mood sense, but there's a lot of flexibility there, so I just wonder how that would feel in a play setting. So we went on ad nauseum about the perspective in Maestro. How do you feel about the unreliable perspective here that made sure all the historical accuracies were up to date?
Yeah, it's so fucking clever how they went about making Salieri our narrator. And not only our narrator, but from his perspective. Everything we see here is from his perspective. And it's just so awesome. All the nonsense that goes on, you can't take it at face value, because this dude's at a mental institution. He's old and he's crazy.
And he was obsessed with this individual.
Yes. So, you said it. He's so unreliable. And as far as the historical inaccuracies, they're pretty accurate to him, what's going on in his mind.
That's actually a really interesting point to bring up, is the skewed and biased and obfuscated perspective each and every one of us has when we have all these other fucking crazy things happening to us, especially when you think you're in the presence of the closest thing to God that ever, man's ever seen, and it's driving you nuts.
Yeah.
Literally. It's a little silly, and I guess I wish I could ask someone who is a little bothered by the historical inaccuracies or whatever, or the shallow nature they depicted Mozart in. This isn't a story really about Mozart. This is a story about the uber self-aware mediocrities of the world, right? Salieri's the champion of mediocre, right? He's so immersed and obsessed with his craft and the music that he, like any artist of a medium, will at times maybe latch on to other specific artists, right? And here we have, I think obviously a caricature of Salieri where he literally drives himself insane thinking about the beauty of Mozart and what he brings to the table. It reminds me of the phenomenon of thinking something's cute and wanting to squeeze it to death or gritting your teeth because it sends out the same pheromone as the satisfaction of violence. Seeing something cute does. And so he sees something so beautiful, like the pure essence, divine beauty. Like, I don't even know how to really describe it, just like a Socratic beauty.
Yeah, God made Mozart.
And it makes him feel in a similar way to seeing something cute, but to an extreme point that he wants to get rid of Mozart, kill Mozart in some fashion. So, I mean, I guess that's just kind of the perspective of the whole film in a nutshell, but they do, I think, a great job putting you in a mode of uncertainty from the very beginning, because they set it up very neatly in the beginning, making you think, did Salieri try to kill Mozart? Right, but it was actually an attempted suicide. Right?
Yeah.
The very next sequence is this priest showing up at this mental institution that is bonkers. The most caricature of a caricature of mental institutions I've ever seen in my life.
I know, it was amazing.
It was awesome. They had all these crazies in the hallway as soon as you walk through the door. It was awesome.
It was so cool.
If that doesn't set what the mood is for what is and isn't fact and fiction, I think you need to watch the movie again. I mean, I don't think there's anything else really to say. You didn't, something obscured your judgment on the language of the film. But I think it's really neat that they set that up similar to Maestro, but different, very much so, right? They go above and beyond to try to legitimize Lenny's perspective, or Lenny goes above and beyond to try to legitimize and objectify his perspective by painting himself as not so favorable. And here we get a little bit more of an objective view from a crazy person. There's not a romantic side of it. There's not a romantic side of the story other than the actual bromance that sort of unfolds. During the climax of the bromance, I feel like you start to even see some regret in Salieri's treatment of Mozart. If you asked him at the right time of the week, he might tell you the best part of his life was writing or finishing the Requiem Mass with Mozart. That was like the most exciting we'd seen him in the film.
Yeah.
And another genius element of this film, coming from Salieri and from the filmmakers, of course, to help flesh out a singular perspective, was Salieri hiring the maid, right? To come work for Mozart. Now he's even there when he's not there. So we get a even more skewed view of what Mozart is doing at home. Because she even talks about how she's afraid of him at some point. Salieri's not afraid of him. He's not getting that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so now she's coming to Salieri afraid and wigged out. And so he's hearing things that aren't even totally true. And so they just do a really interesting, fine job of giving you a singular perspective. It's really it's awesome. I don't know how else to really cut it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I don't understand how really anyone can be confused on whose perspective this is being told from.
And just that thought really has to throw so many other things out the window, like that would be of a concern for a biopic or a documentary. Like, it doesn't matter if Mozart had pink in his hair all of a sudden.
Yeah, even when he played upside down, like maybe that's how good he was to Salieri. He's so good he can play upside down. Maybe he couldn't even do that, but this is what he's seeing.
It's what he's being tormented by.
Yeah, and a lot of people that are upset, I guess, I don't know, about how Mozart was portrayed. That's not really him. I mean, different people knew him differently. He's not this immature, vulgar kid that Salieri saw.
Yeah, you can only imagine, like, when Mozart first met Joseph II, that he didn't do his whole jester thing when they first met. His whole almost beatnik-like attitude, he probably just didn't address him quite right. he probably didn't say your grace or your whatever quite right. And so there was this non-conformity living in him, this backwaterness, right? He wasn't from this area. He wasn't from Vienna. So Salieri immediately was like, who is this snot-nosed brat kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Getting the wrong picture immediately. And, you know, of course he already knew about him, I guess. He knew about his music and everything. And so there's already this obsession brewing, and then the fact that he, you know, it's a trope of tropes, adults being disgusted by progressive kids in one way or another. And so it's awesome. I'm mad at myself for not liking this movie more just because of these things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like this movie a lot. We'll talk about our Letterboxd scores later, but I just can't bring myself to bring it up more because it's just not my kind of movie.
Yeah.
We talked about last episode where Maestro is really kind of inching towards that ceiling of I can't give it a little bit more, but this is like nothing short of a masterpiece of filmmaking. But I can't give it a little bit more because it's just not my kind of movie. I guess if I was writing for some kind of journal and I was supposed to give it some industrial view, I would probably give it a point more. How do you feel about this whole story being told to a priest? It gave me very Life of Pi vibes when they would kind of break off from the main story and we would see that, which is also a funny perspective situation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the plot twist at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's important on several notes. And the first one being that Salieri is Catholic, and he obviously experienced some sort of guilt there towards the end of Mozart's life when he realizes that, hey, we could have probably just been friends and he could have experienced some of his genius more than trying to sabotage him. So there's definitely a lot of guilt that he needs to let out. You know, to the point where he's admitting to killing Mozart. He knows he didn't kill him physically. He didn't go out there and stab him, but he just feels so bad. I think the other part of it, too, is that he's angry with God. How dare God give this vulgar man this much brilliance, with him being so devout from a young age, and even as an adult, you know, never touched a woman, never had whatever thoughts. He gave him nothing. This is almost his chance to tell God exactly how he feels. And we get a lot of that through his monologues. The priest is just symbolically representing God for him to, you know, let it all out. Which I think that's some of my favorite dialogue. Salieri's monologues. Some of my favorite, I guess, script, not dialogue. He says at one point, before I leave this earth, God, I will laugh at you. And I mean, this dude's just going crazy. He's insane at this point. And I like it. I like how he's expressing that in his monologues.
Is he denouncing God? Is he calling him a fool? Or is he still angry with God?
I think he's renouncing God for having created someone like Mozart. I mean, that's how jealous this man is. That's how envious he is. He's renouncing everything he believed in just to destroy this man. I mean, it's insane. Like, really thinking about it, the lengths he's going to.
Yeah, he hires a spy.
He goes and finds the mask that his dad wore to go commission a piece for Mozart's death that he's going to claim as his own. He embarrasses the crap out of Stanzi.
Yeah.
He humiliates that poor girl. When he rang that bell for that butler guy to come in, whatever he is, oh my God, the audacity.
That was awesome.
Poor girl.
He tried to destroy his reputation.
Yes.
He tried to destroy his reputation within the realm of musicians, in the political realm, and in a social realm with his debt.
That's right.
Damn. This dude, while at the same time being in the deepest love that one could ever be in with Mozart, with the Mozart that performs.
Mm-hmm.
I guess when the creature states of Mozart, it's a little bit easier to get to him because the performative Mozart is resting. He sneaks into all of his shows because he wants to. It becomes, I mean, a drug. It's an obsession, but he also knows the divinity of it. You know, he feels it. I don't know. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Everyone else feels it. Everyone else gets it. Everyone else loves Mozart, but he's this special case of understanding the craft and being the right amount of crazy, I guess, to think that Mozart's a mouthpiece for God and no one else gets it. It's just, I don't know, it's like a funny thing. I don't know how to really describe it. I guess that's one of the things about things being godly is they're, you know, indescribable, like Zaxby's chicken. You know, it says they're indescribably delicious.
Is that what they say?
Yeah, that's like the tagline.
I thought you were just hating on Chick-fil-A chicken.
No, fuck Chick-fil-A though.
That's God's chicken.
Oh yeah. That's true. I forgot about that. And maybe we do all empathize with Salieri on one note when we are so passionate about something that it's sometimes hard to describe certain aspects of that passion and what you're into. It's like, unless you just get it, you just won't get it. It's like, you know, kind of like what we talked about with, I guess, A Star Is Born, where you know, a joke happens in a situation and then you try to describe that joke to someone who wasn't in that situation and it just doesn't really make sense. They probably get it, but it's not funny. It's not going to hit even remotely similar.
Right.
And I guess that's one reason this movie is pretty funny, because there's just this frustration that lives in Salieri that's just, I can't get enough of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I feel like towards the end, when he's helping finish the Requiem Mass, is that what it's called? You see a little bit of regret already and remorse happening there. There's this instance of Salieri enjoying his life for once.
Mm-hmm.
But it's too little, too late to, I guess, do anything about what he's already set up for Mozart. I guess, I mean, that's maybe the interpretable kind of end, is he enjoying the demise, the literal demise of Mozart right in front of him, or is he enjoying the process and the collaboration of Mozart and him? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to say he's enjoying the collaboration, because when they start out, he's not up to speed. He's not getting it. He's not writing it down fast enough.
Yeah.
But once they get rolling,
he feels it.
He feels it, and he's writing it.
Yeah, the spirit is in him.
And he's like,
"Did
you get that?" He's like, "Yeah, I got that." Like, and he's like, Mozart's like, "Let me see it." He's like, "No, I got it. Let's go. Come on." And he might be the only person who can help Mozart finish that piece.
At least he thinks so.
At least he thinks so, yes. Which makes us think so.
Yeah.
I get that. And I mean, there's glimpses too of him appreciating the genius behind Mozart when not a lot of other people do. Like when his wife, Mozart's wife, brings him the original pieces, and it's just notes on paper. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a lot of people out there that can look at notes on paper and immediately recognize the brilliance behind it, but he certainly seemed to, and I mean, he dropped them. He was like so amazed, and just the look on his face of how marvelous they were. I mean, it was awesome. And then when Mozart has his big opera, that one that's gonna change everybody's view, and it's gonna be the best opera they've ever seen in their lives. And here's, you know, Salieri watching it, I mean, on the verge of tears. He's just so captivated. But then here's the emperor yawning.
Mm-hmm. Is that the one where he says there's too many notes because one of the other guys says there's too many notes?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, that was that one. Which is just great, because that screams modernity and people not really liking new music. They're bored by new music. You know, there's nothing. It's fun that the Empress is kind of the mouthpiece for that, because he's a really nice person. He's really understanding and tolerant and forgiving. At least that's how Salieri sees him.
Mm-hmm.
And he likes Mozart. It's very clear. He has a soft spot for him. So it's fun to see that conflict happen because Salieri's, funny enough, feels like he's in the presence of God or maybe a holy relic equivalent, but still at the mercy of his state. So he has to be a yes man. Because the too many notes thing was just like, it's too loud kind of thing. It's too, what do people say about rap? I don't even know. Just something like along those lines, like too graphic, too provocative or something. Just reminded me of stuff like that with the Empress, where it's just like, well, he's just kind of stuck in his old ways or his old tastes, really, not old ways, but kind of thing. But he does sense something really fun happening within Mozart, but he's, you like what you like, and some things are acquired tastes, no doubt, but there's a fun conflict happening between all the guys there. I do think Salieri was enjoying the collaboration at the end. I do think, because he could hear the music at the end there. He was in tune. He was in flow. He had the spirit in him, right? The Holy Spirit. And in those moments, we knew Salieri was like one with the body of work and stuff. When he would go see Mozart, he was one with the music, and so they were at his high points and his happiness status when he was helping Mozart finish the Requiem Mass. I think he was, and having brief moments of regret and sadness out of his happiness of working with the man.
Yeah.
Especially when Mozart was like, I thought you hated me. And then they basically had a music sex scene.
Yep, they sure did.
It was awesome. It was really awesome. It's probably one of the best passionate moments, like sexually passionate moments I've ever seen in a movie. Because normally sexual things in movies are usually awkward or they're kind of funny. They're supposed to be kind of funny, which are sometimes still awkward. I don't think there's usually ever that much consequence or meaning out of sex scenes.
Yeah.
It's usually the like two characters butting heads. You're like, when are they gonna like finally embrace each other? And then, it's kind of the payoff. So It doesn't really add anything. It's just the payoff normally. Unless it's like Beau's Afraid and then you have women dying on top of you and stuff. And then but here it's more than a climax. It's a reveal of it. I guess it is the reveal of love. We don't know these characters love each other like they do until, the sensual scene happens, kind of thing. So it's kind of the reverse in a way. It confirms the gayness that we thought was happening all along.
Do you mean that like figuratively?
Yeah, figuratively, like spiritually.
Spiritually,
really.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like this theme of, they're really kind of tiny little grains of theme of like the Empress or whoever saying that this isn't, when they kiss the ring or whatever, it's not a holy relic. They say that a few times throughout, and that caught my ear. And then made me just think, this obsession, obviously, with Mozart being a mouthpiece of God, what he's creating is a holy relic, at least in the eyes of Salieri. And I think that's very neat, very fucking neat. Especially because holy relics are things of thousands of years ago. They're not modern things. Mozart's pretty modern, relative to anything biblical. I like the presence of a holy oriented person being of more modern times. I think that's super neat too. I guess we just need to put Mozart's story in the Bible. Book 1, Mozart.
Yeah, but it only makes sense through Salieri's point of view.
Yeah, well, he's got to write it,
He's going to write it. All right.
David's chapter or whoever, it makes sense through their perspective too. They got a similar level of craziness going on their side too.
It's true. Yeah, I was very surprised about how fun and funny this movie was.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to get that.
Yeah, I did not either.
I mean, first of all, his laugh. It's hilarious. And I love that his laugh triggers Salieri. It triggers him. And it's so funny. And who knows if he actually laughed like that. That's just how he heard him.
Yeah.
That's the laugh that haunts him. So it's so clever and funny at the same time.
It just runs home that perspective thing, because it doesn't matter if Mozart had an annoying laugh, right?
Yeah.
If you're annoyed with someone, every little thing they do is going to be fucking annoying.
Yes,
or at least very specific.
intensifies.
Yeah. Or at least
Yeah.
little specific things, the way they say certain things, the way they fucking smell, whatever.
Yeah.
Mozart probably had a normal laugh. I hope he didn't. I hope it was crazy like this.
And even some of the moments when we're not experiencing through Salieri's eyes, like when the dad comes to town and they're out there dancing and stuff, and the dad has that mask, and he turns, or he's looking at Mozart, then he turns and he's got that kind of weird smile, and then it makes Mozart laugh, and it's so cute, and then he takes off the mask and he's not happy. You're like, oh no. But one of my favorite things about this film that truly made me appreciate how funny it was is that they made Salieri have an obsession with sweets and sugary stuff. So in the beginning, in the intro scene, when they're trying to get him to come out, they're bringing him like what looks like a milkshake and cookies.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's weird when you watch it then. When you're watching the intro, you're like, okay, like, you're not thinking about it too much, I guess. They're just bringing him maybe his dessert, whatever. But then you see the film play out, and then you think about it, and you're like, oh my god, that's hilarious. This dude's obsessed with sweets. I wonder if that was a trait he had. He was known for eating sweets, or if there's something more to that. But that was something that made me appreciate the funny genius here.
Well said.
Also, like the fun they had with Salieri's conniving. They're probably some of my favorite moments in the film too. The one that sticks out to me the most was when when Mozart asked Salieri to talk to the emperor about letting him do the ballet because it wasn't legal. And Salieri's like, yeah, no, of course I'm going to talk to him. And of course he's not going to. He's been sabotaging this man. And then at the practice later on, the emperor comes in and he's like, yeah, tell him to do it. Tell him they look ridiculous dancing to no music, so tell him to do it. And then they tell Mozart to do it, and he looks at Salieri and he gives him a nod, and Salieri gives him a nod back, like, yeah, I did this, and he didn't. And I don't know what you call that kind of humor, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And it also happens with the masked man that asked him to commission his piece. And it wasn't him at the door. It was someone else that gave him money. But Salieri passes it off as it was the masked man, and he brought him like a down payment, so to speak. And it's just funny. It's like this situational kind of humor. I don't know. And I just found it so funny too. So clever.
Yeah, I mean, they somehow found situational comedy in a crazy person's perspective of a very in a very tormented time in their life. That's good writing. That's excellent writing. That's all that is. Like that's someone who understood the material. It's awesome.
Yes.
It's fucking awesome.
I mean, we keep talking about it, and I'm still so surprised that a movie from the 80s can be this good.
It's worth saying, too, that I think the 80s was an especially rough time for filmmaking, too. I think there's a lot of terrible movies that come out of the 80s.
Wow.
They helped facilitate, the modern landscape of what movies look like and how bad storytelling can look like on screen. But if you can just convince people long enough that this is what movies are, you'll end up making money, especially if you can talk to kids, which they did constantly. And now those kids are adults, so now they think movies today made in the vein of the 80s are good, when in fact they're not.
We're brainwashed?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And so we have a whole generation of kids not watching movies today because they're all on YouTube. So they're going to eventually break into the movie scene at some point, maybe they're kids, and they're going to wake up and be like, where are all the good movies? And then, movies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s are going to be cool again.
Ah.
Yeah, and then we're going to have to pick it up after that. New filmmakers and stuff will...
Mm-hmm. We'll snap them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all thanks to these people who grew up on fucking cereal and shit.
What do you mean? What's wrong with cereal? I'm feeling attacked.
These people who grew up on cereal and Power Rangers and Transformers and just nonsense. That's all I'm saying. And the birth of anime. It's the death of culture. Anyways.
All right. On top of the great storytelling here and the great script, the editing was pretty good too. I don't know if I've ever seen anything quite like what they did here. It was just so cool how they blended the music, the score, with what was going on story-wise. I mean, it was just so cool. I don't even know if I'm smart enough to truly appreciate that. But there were some moments when I felt the music. I don't know if that makes sense. What I was supposed to be feeling story-wise, the music was making me feel it too. And I know that's what music is for. That's what the score is for. To make you feel what the story is trying to make you feel. But I don't know. For some reason, I feel like it was just so very well done here. Along with some of the movements. For example, towards the end when they were working on the Requiem Mass piece. Mass? Is that redundant? Is Mass a piece? I don't know. I don't know music. But he would mouth the words, or he would mouth the notes, but we would hear the notes. And then, with the craziness of the perspective too, we don't know what he was actually saying, but Salieri was listening to him. He was in sync. And that was pretty cool. I think there were some moments like that throughout the film too that I just can't place right now. But it was awesome.
It sounds like you were feeling what Salieri was feeling.
Oh no.
You were touched by God in those moments. That is probably the most flattering thing you can say about a film, when it can drive your soul on its own. That's the sign of just a incredibly successful work of art. And I think they run that home, that exact feeling, with trying to tie you in with Salieri at the very end, where we're all of a sudden part of this experience. They're trying to, and they do, I think, very successfully if you're paying attention, making you feel like Salieri, I guess, making kind of building that hype of what it's like to be so brilliant, I guess. Kind of a big convergence happening there.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because when you hear a score like this in any other film, it is just a score. And you might hear some of the exact songs, score pieces, in whatever random film too. I'm sure there's some Mozart in a lot of scores out there.
Oh, for sure.
But there's something really next level about, having a character obsessed with the things Mozart creates, / Mozart trying to find his place in the world and a career out of what he creates, / trying to make a film that deals with these powerhouses, kind of fighting without knowing they're fighting, or at least from one side. Mozart doesn't really. That's part of the issue, though, is he's defeating Salieri without even knowing he's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an important part. It's just one of these amazing movies that works on, almost any level you can cut it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
And it's a tricky movie because I had to think about it after the film quite a bit. It immediately after the film was over, I knew I liked it, but I could not tell you whatsoever why until you think about the cleverness. Because while watching it, I didn't know I felt that way. While watching it, I didn't think about whose perspective I was watching this from. I just, for lack of better words, I just experienced it, which I think is also a good sign of a good movie.
That's a really important perspective to kind of start from too, I think. I mean, if you ask David Lynch, that's the most important place to start while experiencing any work of art. You want to be as unmolested as possible. You want to be as immersed and just completely ready to soak everything in as soon as it happens. You know, you're a blank canvas when it comes to this thing projecting itself onto you. You don't want to bring your biases into stuff, right? What's the fun in that? I guess there can be fun in that, but that's really awesome to hear.
Yeah, because you're so into it. Or I don't know. Watching other movies, I can see little bits and pieces of the movie, or I question, hey, how was that filmed? Or I noticed something about the filming process, which, you know, can be a good or bad thing. But in this movie, I was completely into it, just watching it. So I had to think about why I loved it.
Remember that feeling. I think that's the optimal feeling to approach movies, watching forward.
Yeah, because even some movies, I have to think about what I'm watching.
Yeah, I guess there are those movies that you're just like, what the fuck is going on? And then you gotta, if the pieces don't land when they need to, you can kind of get left behind, I should say.
Yeah.
Because it just takes off.
Yeah, and here it was just, I mean, it was just so well done that I was entertained the whole time. And it wasn't just, you know, an action movie where you're entertained. You're actually engaged.
Yeah, because it's great storytelling. It's great characters. It's great perspective. It's a nice established perspective. Great world building, right? Mm-hmm. It helps that they filmed at some of the original locations, and I think they filmed a lot in Prague too, and they filmed in old cities, so it helped sell the movie, right?
Oh, wow.
So that's awesome. I don't know if they filmed in any sound studios, actually. Sound stages. It's not a movie that has a lot to say about, you know, different Aesop fables or the sensitivity of modernity or something. It doesn't have a lot to say about something. It's not an allegory.
Yes.
Maybe you could find one in there, but more power to you. But
yeah, it was refreshingly nice to watch.
I totally agree.
I did find it funny. I know you mentioned earlier a few things about some kind of modern ideas that this film had. And I guess just briefly, I wanted to mention how debt is still so prominent now and it was back then. I don't know, something about that was kind of funny to me, that Mozart had debt issues. Oh, what? It's just funny.
Yeah.
And I also found it funny how he was basically a content creator and he had to rely on Patreons and commission work, and I don't know, it was, that idea is just so, it's kind of funny.
It is. I think it's a very classic idea too. We just monetized and commercialized it in such a funny way that it almost is embarrassing if you're creating content and you're not creating something
passionate.
Yeah, passionate's a good way to describe it. I don't want to say meaningful or consequential because it doesn't need to be, but something driven by passion. Yeah, well said.
I like that a lot. We haven't changed much. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I'm in debt, so I'm right there with you, Mozart. But
yeah, he even tried to start speaking to the lowest common denominator, speaking to the common folks.
Yeah.
Which it doesn't get into much, but the divide between something like, I don't even know how to describe it, like just like proper fine art versus content, I guess, really.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit of a contrast, even here with Salieri and Mozart. I mean, Salieri wasn't bad. He was still...
He's probably great.
Yeah, he was still a great composer. I mean, even the Emperor Joseph II said that one of his operas was the best opera he had ever seen, and like gave it the award of the best. I don't know what exactly award that was, but he said it was the best. But that didn't matter to him for some reason.
Because he knew
the content and the passion over here.
He knew what excellency looks like. He knew the potential of great music. He knew how hard it was to write a piece.
Yeah, and Mozart was working his ass off. He didn't go out and find a job to provide for his girl and his kid, but he was still working his ass off for what he wanted to create and what he wanted to do. So it wasn't kind of like a natural genius sort of situation. Like it was and it wasn't, because he was still working very hard. And we got that through the maid's perspective. When she told Salieri, like, he's always working. He never stops working. And I think at one point, Stanzi said, my husband's not lazy. He's just working all the time. So it's that passion to be so obsessed, or it's that obsession to work for what you're passionate about versus Salieri.
How many times was he writing a piece?
I just saw him eating sweets and sabotaging.
He's like that example of when you hear writers say that writing is like, if you're a professional writer, most of the time you're not writing, you're just thinking about writing. When an actual writer, I mean, I'm not gonna say you need to write like Mozart, you know, producing 500 pieces or whatever in a lifetime and stuff, but you write. Whether you like what you're writing or not, it doesn't matter. You're writing stuff. A proper writer, a writer by trade, not just because you get paid for it.
Like Stephen King, right?
Like Stephen King, he supposedly writes like at minimum 10 pages a day.
Jesus.
Something like that. He's a writer.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that, you know, some people who claim to be writers aren't writers when they only write once every 2 weeks or something like that. You can still be a writer, but you just need to kind of accept your place in life. That you're not a Stephen King on the at least professional level. Is Stephen King a proper artist? You know, that's, you know, you can argue up and down about that. Can you write too much? Do you lose your passion and soul in it? You know, Mozart did. He had a lot of soul to give, obviously, but he gave it all, and he died in the process. Maybe that's Stephen King. Maybe Stephen King has got only so many books left in him because he's gonna write his magnum opus, and it's gonna kill him. It's just gonna straight up kill him. Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny to not see Salieri write, I don't think, at all. Talked about what he wrote.
Yeah, we only saw, I guess, one of his pieces. We didn't see him write it. We just saw him give Joseph II the piece to welcome Mozart, and he didn't even get to play it. The Joseph II butchered it, which is so funny. And then Mozart comes in and fixes it on the spot. I mean, come on, it's hilarious.
It's an insult.
It's an insult. This man, oh man, how can you not feel for him? But we don't see him write. And even the piece he performs, that's the greatest opera ever. I don't think we see the whole thing like we do Mozart's.
Could you imagine sitting at an opera, at one of Mozart's later operas, like Don Giovanni, I think was 4 hours long.
Holy crap.
Could you imagine?
No. And then being, a woman, I'd probably be in a corset of some kind, and then like 10 layers on me.
Well, we can go to the common man one.
Yeah, let's go to the common man
with
one.
our rags.
Or they're making horses poop out doves.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. I did like what you said while we were watching the film, that the common man, their opera was in English, but all the fancy ones were in Italian or German or French.
Yeah, that was funny. I think the 1700s, I know French was the language of science there for a brief moment of time. And I guess the Italians have had the language of the opera, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like anything else needs to be justified for one, and maybe even taboo. And I guess shows you the progressiveness, I guess, or at least the non-conformist nature of Mozart and how tradition is silly.
Mm-hmm.
I like what do you think about Mozart dying and me getting shipped away?
First of all, for some reason, I didn't expect him to die right then and there when he did. But he did look pretty bad, so That was on me. That was on me for not expecting it. And the way they just threw him in that mass pit, the mass burial pit, was kind of jarring. I mean, here's this great man, and he's just getting thrown. I mean, it just to kind of bring your life into perspective here. You're just going in a hole in the ground, no matter what you did out here. But then we've talked about endlessly about it being from Salieri's point of view. So I wonder if there's something to that. If he actually had a decent burial, but this man's like, let's throw your ass in there.
Maybe. I do think this might be poking fun at the fact that no one knows where Mozart was buried.
Oh.
It's a mystery.
It is?
Yeah, I don't think anyone's asking about it, so it's, is it a mystery if anyone's asking? If nobody's asking?
Yeah, it's still a mystery because people still tell you things even when you're not asking, so.
Okay.
I would say it's a mystery.
Yeah, he's just anonymously in the ground somewhere. Probably is in a mass burial.
Wow, that's hilarious. That's so sad.
That's what happens when you have debt.
That's what. Oh no! Please subscribe so you can pay off my debt. But it was. I don't know. It was just it wasn't an ending I was expecting, especially when this Requiem Mass piece was such a big deal, and Salieri was gonna play it and claim it.
Yeah, the way Salieri depicts the whole arc of Mozart minus his actual compositions, he makes him out like he's for the common man. You know how we see when we go see the common play, the common man play, it's farts and gags and just nothing but comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how Salieri sees the creature outside of his music. And so they kind of land on that exact note. I could see that body being dropped on a mountain of bodies in one of the common man operas.
Yeah.
And then just in case you forgot that Salieri's crazy and that it's, all his, it's and that it's his perspective, they end the movie with him walking through the corridor again and seeing even crazier shit. A man in a cage and...
Yeah, man tied up like a leash. He had a leash around his neck.
Yeah. Just in case you forgot.
I loved it, man. I love it. There was nothing you could cut out. Everything was fitting. Everything made sense. Everything was there to tell the story. It was worth the 3 hours. Good job. Miloš. And our actors, by the way, which we didn't even cover. I think the guy that played Salieri won.
Yeah, they were both nominated for Best Actor.
Won Best Actor, yes.
Yeah, and Salieri's character won, or
yes.
actor won. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading about some people felt that it was kind of stolen from Mozart, but no way, man. This man made you feel jealous for something you didn't even care about.
It's true. It's almost maybe unfair to put Mozart in, or his actor in the running, because the way Salieri portrays him is so one note. Mm-hmm. So he plays that note very, very nicely.
Very well, yes.
But he's not this tormented soul.
Right.
He's not running the gambit of hatred and jealousy and having to face his mediocrity when he's not even mediocre. He's probably great, like we said, but when you're next to a golden turd and you might be the shiniest of the turds around you, but when the golden turd shows up, you're just like, damn, I'm just a turd.
Yeah, and it's so sad because that makes you become less shiny of a turd.
It does. It dulls you.
It dulls you. But don't forget, you can still be the shiniest turd. You can. And
everything could have maybe worked out for the better if you just were a little more friendly.
Yeah. Yeah, that...
end of the day.
That, however, that hour, 2 hours time they spent together composing that, like you said, that was the most fun we saw him have. Friendship is the key here.
All right, man. Well, thank you for this talk. This was a good talk. Did you have fun?
I had fun.
Good. Do you have a budget guess for me?
I do. And I'm going to be honest with you here. I saw the budget before I could scroll past it.
That's fine.
So I'm admitting. But I did have an initial thought of 25 million.
Okay. Not bad.
There was a lot going on. But then I always get confused with movies that are older, yeah, maybe like 2010 and before. I'm completely lost.
Yeah, I do too, just when I see the numbers online, because I rarely ever see accounted for inflation next to it or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, is this $18 million that it says counting inflation?
Right.
Or is it actually like $40 million? Because that's what it would be today.
Which that sounds
a little more right.
The length and all the shit going on? Yes.
But it was also filmed in Austria. So.
Oh.
But I think Prague and Vienna, I think were the major spots. And I think Vienna is one of the most expensive places to live in the world.
Oh.
So I'm not really sure. I don't really know.
Trick.
It says here on Wikipedia that it was 18 million. So there you have it.
18 million.
The citation says that comes from the numbers.com or whatever, and those are only ever estimates.
Okay.
So nothing conclusive, it looks like anyways, but those are probably pretty close. But the box office, which is generally reliable, was 90 million.
Wow. That was a great...
And I don't think that counts for inflation, so that actually looks more like $180 million today.
Whoa.
So that's what's up.
That is what's up.
Very nice. And of course, this film it's probably the most award-winning movie we've watched.
Oh, really?
On the podcast, I think. Yeah.
I mean, it's very well deserved. I don't know what came out around that time to compare it with, but there are very few movies that we barely have issues with.
The general consensus on Letterboxd says the movie's a 4.3.
Wow. I'm surprised it's not higher. I definitely was thinking like a 4.7, almost a 5. At least above a 4.5.
Man, I don't even know if there is a 4.7 on Letterboxd.
Oh, okay. Can you search like the highest rated movie, I wonder?
Yeah.
Have you?
There's a rolling list of the top 250 films on Letterboxd that updates every time something enters.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, and Amadeus is number 110 on that list.
110?
Out of
250, whatever?
Out of 250.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
The highest is Masaki Kobayashi's Harikiri, which is a 4.7.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
There's no
5s.
There's no 4.9s. There's no 5s. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Gotcha.
12 Angry Men is the third highest rated on Letterboxd.
That's very well deserved. Yeah, I give this movie a 4 as my score. I'm not so sure it's going to stay there. It might go higher, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I think I'm there a little bit with you that it's not my type of movie, but it is my type of movie, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, mine is a 3.5.
3.5? Okay.
Yeah. And it could go up to a 4, but that's definitely the ceiling for that scoring for this kind of movie.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of clever elements here that I really appreciate in a movie. But like we said, there's nothing much more than Salieri's mental state and his bromance with Mozart.
Yeah, it's just no score can knock it down from its masterclass level of storytelling. You're really just left with how much you like it. I guess it's hard to criticize in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because they write themselves in such a open room. They don't corner themselves. That it's quite hard to call the bullshit.
Yeah, agreed.
I could see a remake of this happening and a little bit more of a surrealistic lens serving the movie a little bit more. That could maybe float it up on my scale a little bit. Like taking some of the operas and just making them way more crazy than they actually were. Because that's how Salieri saw them. you know?
Mm.
Show the audience a little bit more of what God looks like through Mozart, kind of thing. And then that would kind of speak to me a little bit more on a cinematic level, I think. Keep everything else pretty much the same. But we have these little instances of like, what the fuck was that? You know, like, and it also could help run home the perspective thing too, but I don't know. That may be a little over the top because I feel like they go pretty hard on reminding you. So
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for this talk.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmsteins.
Thank you, people.
Remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for brand new episodes of the Filmsteins over on patreon.com/Filmsteins, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the goods. And remember to leave nice reviews, likes, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas all over our Patreon, social medias, whatever. I don't care. I'll read it here. If you put it on our Patreon, though, come by, give us $1. ASAP. We're starving.
Yes.
You know what we ate today?
Beans.
The broth of beans.
We sure did.
We need some charity over here. But thank you guys. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmsteins. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed our discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmsteins, and follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching, keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmsteins, signing off.